Welcome once again to Gillette Stadium, more specifically the Hall at Patriot Place, brought to you by Raytheon and the Patriots Pro Shop. I'm joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. Well, Chris, finally the Patriots know who they're playing in the second round of the playoffs after a well-earned and well-deserved bye week. They are playing the Indianapolis Colts, Andrew Luck and company, after their miraculous 28-point comeback win against the Kansas City Chiefs in the wild card round last weekend. They are not playing the Bengals. They were upset by San Diego. So the Patriots get Andrew Luck and the Colts. First of all, your thoughts and the takeaways from what a miraculous comeback that was, engineered by Andrew Luck.
I think I was very impressed by the mental toughness, the resilience, the grit that the Colts displayed in that game against the Chiefs. And a lot of guys that we just talked to in the locker room, including Bill Belichick, were also impressed by the fact that they were able to come out of that, that 28-point deficit. They were able to make something of it in the second half and come from behind post victory there. I think that they face a tall order coming in here, not trying to knock off the Patriots, but I think what we've seen so far in the playoffs from the Colts has been very impressive at this point.
Well, I think one of the takeaways I had watching that game, and even watching the comeback, Chris, they still don't have a great running game.
Exactly.
And I find it hard to believe that a non-bruising defense without a pounding running game would have a chance, even though it's going to be relatively warm, about 45 degrees come kickoff Saturday night, chance of rain, and have that kind of chance against the Patriots here at Gillette.
I think the Patriots really caught a sizable break. When you're talking about playoff matchups, the Colts, like you said, do not run the ball consistently at all. So I think from that perspective, I think the Patriots feel pretty good about this matchup. Donald Brown, Trent Richardson have really underwhelmed to this point in the season. We all know about the Patriots' struggles when it comes to defending the run. You're looking at a pretty good matchup. I would say a winnable matchup for New England. I wouldn't be surprised if New England came out in nickel and dime packages and dared them to try and run the ball Saturday night here, in this divisional playoff contest, because I think that we're going to see a Colts team that is going to be interested, obviously, in playing to their strength, and they're going to try and throw the ball. They're going to have to try and run the ball a little bit. I think when you look at the package, the complete offensive package, this Indianapolis team in its totality, they don't do a good job running the ball. They're about as one-dimensional as you can see at this time of year. They're going to have to find a way to try and run it if they're going to want it, if they really want to have a chance to come in here and knock off the Patriots.
All right, I was in for the Tom Brady press conference, Chris, and the first thing I noticed was how he looked. First of all, he had a cough drop in his mouth. Second of all, he had a bit of a red eye in the right eye, so he clearly wasn't feeling well. We asked him point blank toward the end of the press conference, do you have a cold? And he said, yeah, I've got a little bit of a cold. I got the sniffles. It's that time of year. Patriots, even moved practice indoors today on Tuesday to account for the wind chill, the sub-zero wind chill here at Gillette. Look, these Patriots, Chris, obviously they want to be ready for the weather, but they want to be ready health-wise as well, and that's a big factor going into this game, and a big reason the Patriots moved their practice indoors at least for one day.
I think also, too, look, we're indoors as well, so I think that gives you some sense of just how cold it is down here today. But I also think part of it is this. The weather forecast on Saturday calls for 40, 50 degrees, even though it's supposed to be a little bit rainy. So I think the conditions are more suited to their time in the dome as opposed to being outside. I think if the conditions were 15 to 20 degrees on Saturday night, I think that might be a little bit different. But I think it's a good call. Look, it's dangerous to be outside. Health aside, it's dangerous to be outside today. So I think it was the right call, them moving indoors at least for this afternoon.
And I think the last thing the Patriots want to deal with is a team-wide epidemic of flu and cold going around the locker room. Bill Belichick wants them to be tough, but he also wants to use common sense as well. I need the players to be as close to 100% as they can be at this time of year. Asked Rob Ninkovich about that. He also met with the media on Tuesday, and he said it's not so much the cold as it is the footing at this time of year, because what happened on Monday, we had obviously had rain here in FOXBORO, and it got cold, almost instantaneously, and that rain in the field froze over. And that is dangerous and slippery, and that is yet another reason the Patriots moved indoors. Now, we're talking about Rob Ninkovich, a big loss on the defense. It seems like we've been saying this every single week we tape one of these previews. This week, no surprise, Brandon Spikes out for the year. He's on season-ending injured reserve. He's going to need knee surgery. His uniform's right behind us here on the racks. The Patriots going to have to find a way to replace him, starting with Dante Hightower. What did Dante Hightower tell you in the locker room on Tuesday?
Hightower was very forthcoming at a number of levels. First of all, he admitted the fact that, look, he tried to do too much earlier in the year. When Mayo went down, they had some other losses on the defensive side of the ball. he tried to get outside his comfort zone a little bit. He tried to do too much. What he said is now he's dialed back, he's at a better place, and I think we're seeing him play better football because of it. But so much more is going to be put on the shoulders of Dante Hightower, Dane Fletcher, Jamie Collins going forward, because really that's the group that you have at that linebacker spot now, with Mayo out and Spikes out for the rest of the year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that group comes together. I'm fascinated to see how they go about defending the run, because you lose Wilfork, you lose Kelly, you lose Mayo, you lose Spikes. Those are four of arguably your best run defenders. Now, again, we talked about the fact that this is not a great team when it comes to running the football. The Colts really don't run the ball all that consistently. I wonder if they're going to try and test that. Again, we talked about maybe the Patriots coming out in nickel and dime packages to try and dare them to run. I think we might see that more and more. So it's going to be interesting to see how the loss of Spikes, at least in the short term, affects this defense and the way they go about defending the Colts on Saturday.
Well, it's interesting that potentially the two teams they could be seeing before you get to a Super Bowl are the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. Neither team really with an explosive running game, though no Sean Marino did run 224 yards in that Sunday night game. Neither team, though, really relies on its running game.
Exactly, and at the same point, too, we can sit here and say, well, you know, we're going to book our flight to Denver for the AFC Championship game in 2 weeks, but you look at the Chargers, and they've been such an up-and-down team. We saw it last week with their play against the Bengals. I would not be shocked in the slightest if the Patriots ended up hosting the AFC Championship game here against the Chargers in 2 weeks. It's been that kind of year. It's been a strange year, especially in the AFC. We don't know quite what the Chargers are capable of. They could go in there and they could put up 40 on the Broncos. They could also go in there and Phillip Rivers could throw 3 picks and lose 38-10. So I think that really is probably, if you had to break them down, the 2 games this week in the AFC, that's the X factor for me. I think the Patriots have to feel pretty good about where they are, even with all the injuries. The matchups, I would think, certainly favor New England coming into this one. The other one, I'm not so sure about.
Well, Phillip Rivers is no Andy Dalton, Chris. I would not count on that happening as somebody who saw Andy Dalton and Phillip Rivers up close and personal on Sunday afternoon at Paul Brown Stadium. I can assure you of that. So, your final score for Saturday night, obviously you like the Patriots.
I do. I think New England's going to win this thing. I think I said earlier in the week 30-24, and I'm going to stick with that. I think the Colts are going to be able to keep it interesting for a half or so, but I think ultimately in the end, a superior running game. I think the Patriots certainly have the edge both ways on the ground when you're talking about run defense and their ability to run the ball. The Colts have been a little bit inconsistent in their ability to defend the run. I think it's going to be another big night for the Garrett Blunt, Stephen Ridley, Brandon Bolden, Shane Vereen, that group. And I think that's going to be the difference in this one. I think New England's going to win this thing 30-24.
All right, Chris, we'll see what happens. Certainly it'll be very interesting to see how the Indianapolis Colts deal with the come down or the week after such a miraculous comeback. Obviously, the Bills used that in 1993 to get back to the Super Bowl, only to lose it again. But still, it'll be very fascinating to see what happens come Saturday night here at Gillette Stadium. For Christopher Price, I'm Mike Petraglia inside the Patriots Pro Shop here at Gillette Stadium, WEEI.com.